This episode is scripted by John Ruths and Newell Fisher, and is narrated, recorded and edited by Newell Fisher. It is dedicated to the people of Ukraine and of Russia. Hello, and welcome to the Watership Down podcast, episode 52, in which we will be looking at chapter 50, and last, the penultimate chapter of the original novel. First of all, though, some unfinished business from chapter 49. The lost paragraph resolved. The lost paragraph resolved. Before going through this week's chapter, I need to apologise for completely missing a crucial moment in chapter 49 last week, especially given all the time I spent on the lost paragraph in episodes 7 to 10, 15 and 23. The last words of chapter 49 spoken by Bigwig are, quote, "And if he'll believe you, Hazel-rah, then I will," end quote. In editions of the book that include the lost paragraph, this is the moment Bigwig fulfills his statement at the end of chapter 11, quote, "Hazel-rah," interrupted Bigwig, "Chief Rabbit, frith in a wasp's nest. The day I call you Chief Rabbit, Hazel, that'll be the day, that will. I'll stop fighting that day," end quote. It is the moment of resolution of the tension that has existed throughout the novel, as Bigwig realises that he has both reached the end of his fighting life and has been saved by Hazel's leadership, without which he would certainly have died at the hands of the Efrafans. In chapter 47 he referred to Hazel as his Chief Rabbit in a moment that unsettled Woundwort and Vervain, but not by name. Here he actually confers the title of Chief Rabbit upon him in person. As the effective captain of El-ahrairah, and one who has literally just placed his life on the line with no prospect of survival, you could argue that this is the true moment of the coronation of Hazel-rah, but only if the lost paragraph is included. So, having settled that last tension of the novel, let's enjoy a little Watership Down time in what is surely the most chilled out chapter of the entire book. Chapter 50, and last. The pre-chapter quote from Jane Austen's Northanger Abbey is an interesting and seemingly complex one. Without any context on that written work, it would be really impossible to understand. The sophistication of some of his pre-chapter quotes are such that it seems that he was being deliberately mysterious, at least at times. Much in the same way that someone writing a code might be. They write it wanting to get it figured out, but only by those worthy of finding the answer. The internet has made this easier, of course. This quote concerns the initial disapproval of a marriage between Catherine and Henry by the general that is mentioned, General Tilney. What could this possibly mean? The meaning is possibly very holistic and reaches back to the very beginnings of this great story. The general possibly represents a few things, both Sandalford as a warren and the Threar as the leader of it. The Threar disapproved of Fiver's vision, and there was simply no way that a mass exodus could have taken place. So our heroes, led by Hazel, depart Sandalford and eventually make it to Watership Down, where a new warren is founded. The felicity and adding strength to their attachment is a reference to Watership Down and its new population. In this context, and more obviously, the general might simply refer to General Woundwort's recent attempts to destroy the warren on Watership Down, having brought its inhabitants closer together as a community. What is the exact reference? It is hard to say. Sometimes the pre-chapter quotes of Watership Down are a bit like the lyrics to many Steely Dan songs from the 1970s. At times the meaning is pretty clear, at other times they are not so clear, but they have a certain feeling, and maybe need not be overly defined. It is just fun trying to figure out what Adams meant by choosing them. The first couple of paragraphs are long and describe the season at the opening of the chapter, autumn, as well as the coming of winter. These paragraphs are very descriptive, and it's a change of pace and style for Richard Adams after recent events. These long descriptive passages on nature, which has been with us from the start of the book, may seem tedious to some readers, but they've been absent for a few chapters now due to the siege of Watership Down, so for any reader who has made it this far, their return should be welcome. We are told it is now 6 weeks later, and it is now autumn, or the fall as it is known in American English. Adams wants to impart feelings of happiness in spite of the approach of winter. He mentions leaves still being on trees, the warmth of the sun, but also a feeling of growing emptiness, fewer insect sounds, and cleared, harvested fields below the down. Adams then describes what winter means for rabbits, and you have to suspect that this is one of those times when the wise Mr. Lockley is being referenced. Winter is hard, but not without its benefits. What is wonderful about this is that he takes real rabbit habits and combines them with the story and characters he's created. I'd guess that garden raiding when grass is harder to find really is a thing, but he also adds things like storytelling and playing bobstones. Rabbits have a language in this story, but they cannot write or understand writing. Storytelling is how they share their experiences, teach lessons, set norms and mores, and how they record their history. We humans were much the same until writing was developed. We're now in the present, and rabbits are outside above ground. The Efrafans who were trapped when they were defeated stayed and joined Watership Down. This happened largely due to Hazel's civility and determination. Allowing this rather than running them off simply makes him an even better leader. Fiver seems to have a sense of detachment that seems permanent. This seems sad in a way, but it is possibly how Fiver was eventually meant to be. This is especially poignant in the light of his discussion with Hazel in chapter 28, At the Foot of the Hill, surely a hidden gem in this book, in which Fiver hints at the nature of the other world in this book, and in which Hazel sets the very events in motion that will result ultimately in Fiver reaching his present state. For while he has not reached the extremes of the poet's Silverweed of the Warren of the Snares, he has surely moved in that direction. Just as Adams balanced the sense of warmth and cold in those first 2 paragraphs in the chapter, he does something similar here. Bigwig mentions the price that Fiver has also paid for the Warren's victory over Efrafa. As sad as this is, he also contrasts this. We know that he has a doe, Vilthuril, who he is devoted to. She understands him in much the same way that Hazel does. These are interesting contrasts, and you could say it means that Fiver came out all right in the end on balance, especially given his position in life at the start of the book. Hyzenthlay has a litter who are out silflaying, but who Hyzenthlay's buck is not mentioned. More Adams mysteries. We know by reading Tales from Watership Down that her buck is Hazel, however we're not told this here. Holly and Hazel discuss the finer points of rabbit litters. Rabbit litters seem quite hopeful and serve as a major indicator of the success of the Warren. The conversation turns to General Woundwort. Holly makes some general comments and serves as a reader's point of view narrator. Groundsel, the former Efrafan, now a member of Watership Down, says that Woundwort is not dead and has likely founded a new Warren someplace else. But surely Woundwort is truly dead, especially given that Bigwig took all the wind out of him. While he's a member of Watership Down now, Groundsel clearly still has admiration for his old chief rabbit. While we, the readers, may not agree, Groundsel also uses his point of view to make a great point. While Woundwort was certainly a dictator, it was not without certain benefits. He made things happen for rabbits that were very unexpected and rare. He made them believe they could be something more. Groundsel's speech is a reminder of the genuine devotion and pride that tyrants inspire in those that follow them. Indeed, that is how they gain and hold power. It is also how they persuade others to commit acts of aggression and brutality against weaker targets. But this is just a story about rabbits, right? Silver, whom we know is a very tough fighter but also speaks with wisdom, is about to strongly debate Groundsel's assertions. However, Hazel prevents this, as an argument, even an amicable one, will really not do at this point. Instead, Hazel does what we expect him to as a leader of quality and looks at the positive things, such as all they've learned from Efrafan ways. Hazel speaks in a measured way, much as the Threar did. Might this be an indication, as mentioned once before in this podcast, that he may have truly been the father of Hazel, and therefore also of Fiver? We next learn that Campion is now the Rah of the Woundwort-free Efrafa, and this makes sense. Hazel has the idea of Groundsel taking some rabbits out of the soon-to-be slightly overcrowded Watership Down, combining them with some rabbits from Efrafa, and starting a new warren geographically between the 2 warrens. This is very interesting because Hazel is basically proposing to Groundsel that he become a chief rabbit of his own and offers up some of Watership Down's younger rabbits to follow him. This is an amazing level of authority, but is wielded in a benevolent way. Hazel thinks that it will be possible to arrange with the help of Kehaar. The mere mention of our favourite gull has Silver mentioned that someone at the Warren will be happy to see him. We of course know that this is Bigwig, and now the story turns to him as he is training members of Clover's litter. Adams describes them as a likely lot, and this is Adams' way of saying that hutch rabbits have worked out well in Watership Down. Bigwig now bears the marks of his victorious battle with Woundwort, and he's now training rabbits to be in the El-ahrairah. These young rabbits are more interested in hearing about his experiences, and we can understand that. Could the mildly comic scene of Bigwig training these youngsters have been the inspiration for the less than serious way he is treated in the first two series of the 1999 TV series? If so, this is a shame. Another interesting aspect of this scene is the way in which it emphasises the compressed lives of rabbits from a human perspective. 6 weeks previously, these young talking rabbits were newborn, so the 6 weeks that have passed for the rabbits of Watership Down might seem more like years. We now hear a bit about changes to the warren in the form of a winter burrow, and how the roof of the Honeycomb will eventually be healed by the combination of nature and the passage of time. These things also seem hopeful. Silver announces the arrival of burrow diggers. These are Pipkin and Bluebell with 3 or 4 does. Might this mean that these are bucks whose does are expecting litters? In any case, this is a confident Pipkin, while Bluebell is his usual self, joking that he has bought one of the newly dug concealed holes to show Hazel that he can't see it. Typically surreal Bluebell humour. An idea forms for the rabbits to go over to the evening side of the wood, presumably its western edge, where there will still be some sunshine before it grows dark. Silver wants to make the approach stealthy and real Campion style. They soon come upon the Vilthuril and her and Fiver's litter of 4 rabbits. They are listening to their mother tell a story. This story sounds like it is about El-ahrairah and Rabscuttle, but we readers recognise it as being strongly interlaced with Watership Down's own story, in particular the encounter with the warren of the Snares. The young litter see Hazel-rah and more or less mob him in a good-natured way. After all, he's also their uncle. And then one of these young rabbits, young Threar, has a vision of a man approaching the down on a horse. This, of course, proves to be true. Vilthuril announces that this is because of Fiver's blood, and this makes sense. At least some of the supernatural characteristics of the warren's seer can apparently be passed on to offspring. The fact that one of Fiver's kittens is named Threar could also be another coded Thayer reference. The chapter concludes with Hazel proposing that it's time for all to get back underground again. Fiver is seen not far away towards one of the holes, and soon all the rabbits are underground for the evening. And all too soon, the main interactive narrative of the characters of the novel Watership Down is suddenly over. Adams describes dusk and the coming of the autumn night sky with the constellations seen in Britain at that time of year. We have now heard all but 3 of our lapine and avine friends speak for the last time in the novel. The chapter ends with the hopeful words, "Underground, the story continued." Next time, we say goodbye to the 1972 novel Watership Down, and to Hazel-rah.